Princess Zara stood by the tall crystal window of her father's palace, watching something that made her skin change colors from worry. Down in the big courtyard below, strange creatures in shiny armor were dragging someone in heavy chains. Someone looked nothing like her people. Her people, the Colonians, were tall and graceful, with skin that glowed like soft lights and long, elegant arms that moved like dancers. But this prisoner was different. Short, thick with muscle and covered in marks that looked like old wounds. His skin didn't glow at all. A human, she whispered to herself, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Emperor Vex, her father, stood next to her with all four of his arms crossed over his chest. His face showed no emotion, but Zara knew him well enough to see he was thinking hard about something important. "Father, you're not really going to put him in the fighting arena, are you?" Zara asked, her voice carrying the musical sounds that all her people made when they spoke. The human had done something that seemed impossible. Their reports said he had destroyed 3 of their biggest warships all by himself. 3 ships that each carried 1,000 soldiers. How could one small creature do such a thing? "That's exactly why we need to test him, daughter," her father replied, his deep voice echoing in the crystal chamber. "If we want to understand our enemies, we must see what makes them so hard to defeat." As the guards pushed the human toward the prison cells, something happened that made Zara's heart race. The prisoner looked up at their window. Even from so far away, she could see his eyes. They were dark, like the deep space between stars. But there was something in them that made every part of her body want to run and hide. It wasn't anger she saw there. It wasn't even hatred, though she expected both. It was something much scarier: intelligence. This human was thinking, planning, watching everything around him even while being dragged in chains. "The stories about humans," Zara said softly, pressing closer to the cool crystal wall. "They say humans don't think like normal creatures. They say humans do things that make no sense, but somehow they still win." Her father's main eyes never moved from the human below. "Stories," he said. "We'll learn the truth soon enough." But Zara had read more than just stories. She had studied the secret reports that came from the war zones. Reports that told impossible tales of human soldiers who kept fighting even when they should have been dead. Humans who somehow turned their weaknesses into strengths. Humans who could make friends with their enemies and then convince those enemies to fight against their own people. The most frightening report talked about something called human adaptability. It said that humans could learn to survive in any environment, no matter how harsh. They could eat almost anything, live in places too hot or cold for most creatures, and somehow find ways to thrive where others would die. And they never gave up. Never. Even when everything seemed hopeless, humans would keep fighting until their last breath. The human prisoner disappeared into the palace's lower levels, but Zara couldn't stop thinking about those dark eyes. There had been something else in them, something that bothered her even more than the intelligence: sadness. Deep, endless sadness. "What do you think he's thinking about right now?" she asked her father. "Escape, probably, or revenge. That's what prisoners usually think about." But Zara wasn't so sure. The sadness in the human's eyes didn't look like the anger of someone planning revenge. It looked like the sadness of someone who had lost everything important to them. She had heard whispers among the palace servants about what happened to the human's home world. The military called it a cleaning operation, but the servants used darker words. They said the human's planet had been turned into a burning wasteland where nothing could live. If that was true, then this human was probably the last of his kind in this part of the galaxy. Alone, far from home, with no family or friends left alive. The thought made Zara's skin flicker between purple and silver, the colors her people showed when they felt guilty about something. "Father, why did we have to destroy their whole planet? Couldn't we have just made them surrender?" Emperor Vex finally turned to look at his daughter. His expression was the same one he used during important government meetings, calm, controlled, and a little cold. Because, my dear daughter, humans are not like other creatures we've conquered. Other species, when they lose a battle, they accept, defeat, and learn to live under our rule. But humans— He paused, choosing his words carefully. Humans have something our scientists call genetic stubbornness. They refuse to accept that they've lost, even when continuing to fight will only bring them more pain. But that sounds almost brave. Bravery and stupidity often look the same from the outside, her father said. The difference is that brave creatures know when to stop fighting. Stupid creatures fight until they're all dead. As they walked, away from the window, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that her father was wrong about something important. The human in chains hadn't looked stupid. He had looked like someone who understood exactly what was happening to him and had accepted. At that night, Zara lay in her sleeping chamber but couldn't rest. She kept thinking about the human's eyes and wondering what he was doing down in the prison cells. Was he planning an escape like her father thought? Was he thinking about revenge? Or was he just sitting alone in the dark, remembering his destroyed home and all the people he would never see again? For the first time in her life, Princess Zara found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, her people weren't always the heroes in every story they told themselves. 3 days later, the entire palace was buzzing with excitement. Emperor Vex had announced that the human prisoner would face the arena's deadliest creature, a Vorthak beast that had never lost a fight. Princess Zara didn't want to watch, but she couldn't stay away either. Something about the human had been bothering her for days. She kept remembering those sad, intelligent eyes and wondering what kind of person was hiding behind them. The great arena of Kalos Prime was huge, carved from black stone that had stood for thousands of years. Thousands of her people filled the seats, their glowing skin creating a beautiful light show as they chattered excitedly about the upcoming fight. "This should be interesting," said General Korth, the Empire's top military leader. His battle scars glowed bright blue, showing how excited he was. "The Vorthak has destroyed every challenger for the past 2 years. Zara sat in the royal viewing box next to her father, trying not to show how nervous she felt. The human was going to die today, and somehow that thought made her feel sick. "Maybe we should have tested him against something smaller first," she suggested quietly. Her father shook his head. "If humans are as dangerous as our reports claim, we need to see their full capabilities. A small test won't tell us anything useful." Down in the arena, gates opened on opposite sides. From one gate came the Vorthak, a nightmare creature the size of a small building. It had 6 legs that ended in claws dripping with acid, and its roar could break glass from half a mile away. Its hide was thick enough to stop plasma shots, and its teeth were longer than a grown Colonian's arm. From the other gate walked the human. He looked so small compared to the monster. The arena guards had given him simple leather armor and a basic plasma sword, the kind of equipment they gave to prisoners who were meant to die quickly. He moved slowly, calmly, like he was taking a walk in a peaceful garden instead of entering a fight for his life. "Look at how it moves," whispered Dr. Yeath, the palace's head scientist. "No fear response at all. Either it's incredibly brave or incredibly stupid." But Zara was watching something else. The human wasn't looking at the Vorthak. Instead, he was studying the arena itself, the walls, the sand, the shadows cast by the viewing boxes. He was learning the space, understanding it. "Why isn't he afraid?" she asked. "Maybe humans don't feel fear the same way we do," her father replied. The crowd fell silent as the Vorthak noticed its opponent. The beast's eyes, each one the size of dinner plates, focused on the small human figure. It scraped its claws against the stone floor, sending sparks flying. Then it charged. The sound was like thunder mixed with a landslide. 6 massive legs pounded across the arena floor, shaking the entire building. The Vorthak's mouth opened wide, showing rows of teeth that could cut through metal. What happened next would be talked about in the Empire for years to come. Instead of running or trying to fight the charge head-on, the human did something unexpected. He dropped to the ground and rolled directly under the charging beast, moving so fast he seemed to disappear for a moment. The Vorthak, going too fast to stop, stumbled as its target vanished from in front of it. In that split second of confusion, the human appeared behind the creature's massive head. His plasma sword found the one spot on the Vorthak's body that wasn't protected by thick armor, a small nerve cluster at the base of its skull that even experienced arena fighters had trouble locating. The entire fight lasted 37 seconds. The crowd sat in complete silence, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The mighty Vorthak, killer of champions, lay motionless on the arena floor. The human stood beside it, not celebrating or showing off, but looking down at the dead creature with what appeared to be genuine sadness. "Impossible," General Korth whispered, his scars now flickering with confusion instead of excitement. The Vorthak was bred specifically to counter every known fighting technique. How did the human know about the nerve cluster? More importantly, Dr. Yith added, how did it move so precisely under pressure? That roll required perfect timing and spatial awareness. Princess Zara watched as the human looked up at their viewing box. Once again, their eyes met across the distance. This time, she saw something new in his expression. Not pride or anger, but a deep tiredness, like someone who was sick of fighting but couldn't figure out how to stop. "He's not enjoying this," she said suddenly. "What do you mean?" her father asked. "Look at him. He just won an impossible victory, but he looks sad about it. Why would a warrior be sad about winning?" Emperor Vex studied the human more carefully. Perhaps it's just disappointment that the fight wasn't more challenging. But Zara didn't think so. The way the human had looked at the dead Vorthak reminded her of how she felt when she accidentally stepped on a small flower in the palace gardens. It was the look of someone who wished they didn't have to destroy things, even when they had no choice. "Father, what if the reports about humans are wrong? What if they're not naturally violent creatures?" "Don't be foolish, daughter. You just watched one of them defeat our most powerful arena beast in less than a minute. But being good at fighting doesn't mean someone likes fighting," Zara pointed out. "Maybe humans only fight so well because they've had to learn how to survive." As the guards moved to escort the human back to his cell, he did something that surprised everyone. He knelt down next to the dead Vorthak and placed his hand on its massive head for a moment, like he was saying goodbye to a fallen opponent. "Respect," General Korth said, his voice filled with confusion. "It's showing respect to the creature it just destroyed. I've never seen anything like it." Dr. Yith was taking notes frantically. "This behavior doesn't match any of our psychological profiles of human warriors. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty and cruel." Princess Zara watched the human disappear through the exit gate, her mind racing with new questions. If humans were supposed to be monsters, why had this one looked so sad about having to fight? If they were supposed to be stupid and savage, how had he solved the Vorthak puzzle so quickly? And most confusing of all, why did watching him win make her feel so worried about what would happen to him next? That night, as the palace celebrated their successful test, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they had learned something important about humans. But she wasn't sure it was what her father had wanted to learn. Maybe the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't that they were violent. Maybe it was that they were much more complicated than anyone had expected. For 3 days after the arena fight, Princess Zara couldn't stop thinking about the human. She kept remembering how he had looked at the dead creature with such sadness, and how his eyes seemed to carry stories she couldn't understand. Finally, she made a decision that would have shocked everyone in the palace. She was going to visit the prisoner. The lower levels of the palace were different from the beautiful crystal chambers where she lived. Down here, everything was made of dark metal and stone. The air felt heavy, and the only light came from glowing panels in the walls. She told the guard she was conducting research for her father. It wasn't exactly a lie. She did want to learn about humans. She just didn't mention that her father had strictly forbidden anyone from talking to the prisoner without permission. The human cell was at the end of a long hallway. It was built to hold creatures much larger and more dangerous than him, with thick metal bars and energy shields that could stop a charging Vorthak. But when Zara reached the cell, she found something unexpected. The human was sitting on the floor, completely focused on something he was drawing with a small piece of rock. He moved the stone carefully across the metal floor, creating lines and shapes with incredible precision. "It's my home," he said without looking up, somehow knowing she was there. "Or at least, how I remember it before your people destroyed it." Zara's translation device struggled with some of his words. Home was easy enough to understand, but other concepts didn't translate well into her language. He spoke of something called sunrise and ocean and a place called grandmother's house that made no sense to her at all. "Why do you draw it if it's gone?" she asked, staying carefully near the wall far from the cell bars. The human finally looked up, and again, she was struck by the intelligence in his dark eyes. "Because I never want to forget what it looked like when it was beautiful. Your people can destroy the place, but they can't destroy my memories of it." The way he said it wasn't angry or threatening. It was just sad, like someone talking about losing something precious. "You're afraid of me," he observed, noticing how she kept her distance. "That's smart. You should be afraid. But probably not for the reasons you think." Over the next few weeks, Zara found herself returning to the cell again and again. Each visit taught her something new about humans that contradicted everything she had been told. The human told her about his life before the war. He had been something called a scientist, someone who studied living creatures from other planets. When Zara's people first arrived at Earth, he had been part of the team that tried to make peaceful contact. "We were so excited," he said during one of their conversations. "First contact with beings from another world. We thought it would be the most wonderful day in human history." "What went wrong?" Zara asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. The human was quiet for a long time. "Your military leaders decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live. They said our ability to adapt and survive made us a threat to galactic stability." Zara felt her skin shift colors, a sign of distress that she couldn't hide. She had read the official reports about the human problem, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. "They took my research partner first," the human continued. "Dr. Elena was the kindest person I ever knew. She spent her whole life trying to understand alien species, hoping that knowledge would help us live in peace with other worlds." "What happened to her?" Zara whispered. "Your scientists wanted to understand how human minds work. They wanted to know why we don't give up when other species would surrender. So they studied her for months." The human's voice became very quiet. "She died still believing that colonians were good people who had just made a mistake." Zara felt sick. The official reports had called it necessary research for planetary security. They had never mentioned that the test subjects were people with names and friends and dreams. "Is that why you're fighting us now? For revenge?" The human shook his head. "I fight because there's no choice left. Your empire won't stop until every human is dead. We can surrender, and you'll study us until we die. We can run, and you'll hunt us down. The only option left is to fight back and hope that maybe, somehow, we can convince your people that we don't have to be enemies." "But you destroyed 3 of our warships by yourself," Zara said. "How is that possible?" "Because humans are very good at learning," he replied simply. Your ships are powerful, but they follow predictable patterns. Human minds are flexible. We see patterns that other species miss, and we find ways to use those patterns against our enemies. As their conversations continued, Zara began to understand why her people found humans so frightening. It wasn't just that they were good fighters. It was that they were unpredictable in ways that made traditional military thinking useless. The human told her stories about other battles where small groups of humans had defeated much larger alien forces through tactics that made no logical sense but somehow worked anyway. Your generals think in terms of numbers and firepower, he explained. But humans think in terms of possibilities. We look at a situation and ask, what if we try something completely different? Sometimes it gets us all destroyed, but sometimes it lets us win fights we had no business winning. That sounds terrifying, Zara admitted. It should be. But it's also why humans might be valuable allies instead of enemies, if your people could ever see past their fear. The more Zara learned about humans, the more she began to question everything her society had taught her. These weren't mindless monsters driven by violence. They were intelligent beings who had been forced into an impossible situation and were doing whatever they could to survive. But the most disturbing realization was that the human in the cell wasn't just a warrior. He was a scientist, someone who had once hoped for peace between their species. The war had turned him into a fighter, but underneath that, he was still someone who preferred understanding to violence. "What would you do if the war ended tomorrow?" she asked during one visit. The human smiled for the first time since she had known him. "I'd go back to studying alien life forms. There's so much about the universe we still don't understand. So many species we've never met, so many worlds we've never explored." For a moment, Zara could see the person he had been before the war. Curious, peaceful, excited about learning new things. It made her wonder how many other humans had been changed from scientists and teachers and artists into soldiers by her people's decision to destroy their world. That night, lying in her crystal bed high above the palace, Princess Zara made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, she would ask her father for permission to conduct an official study of their human prisoner. She just hoped she could convince him that understanding their enemy might be more valuable than simply defeating him. Princess Zara stood outside her father's office, holding a data tablet and trying to calm her nerves. After weeks of secret conversations with the human prisoner, she had finally convinced herself to approach Emperor Vex with an unusual request. "Your Highness," came a nervous voice behind her. Dr. Yeath, the palace's head scientist, was walking toward her with his own collection of tablets. His bioluminescent patches were flickering rapidly, a sure sign that he was worried about something. "Dr. Yeath, perfect timing," Zara said. "I was hoping to speak with you about conducting some research on our human prisoner." The elderly scientist's 4 eyes widened in surprise. "That's actually why I wanted to see your father as well. The preliminary scans we took after the arena fight have revealed some very disturbing information." 20 minutes later, they stood together in the Emperor's private study, a magnificent room carved entirely from crystal that offered a view of the entire capital city. Emperor Vex sat behind his desk, reviewing military reports with the focused attention that made him such an effective ruler. "Father, Dr. Yeath has discovered something important about our prisoner," Zara began carefully. "Something that might change how we understand the entire human species." The Emperor set down his reports and gave them his full attention. "Show me." Dr. Yeath activated a holographic display that filled half the room with swirling images of genetic codes and brain scans. "Your Majesty, when we studied the human's biology, we found something unexpected. This creature's neural pathways are unlike anything in our databases." The hologram shifted to show a comparison between human and Colonian brain structures. Even Zara, who wasn't a scientist, could see the differences were dramatic. Most species, including our own, have specialized brain regions for specific functions, Dr. Yeath explained. But humans appear to have a much more flexible neural architecture. Different parts of their brains can take over functions from damaged areas. What does that mean in practical terms? Emperor Vex asked. It means they can adapt to situations that would be impossible for other species to handle. Their minds literally reshape themselves based on what they need to survive. Zara watched her father's expression carefully. She could see him processing this information and understanding why it made humans such effective fighters. There's more, Dr. Yeath continued nervously. I asked the prisoner to examine some of our biological data, thinking it might help us understand human psychology better. The hologram changed again, now showing detailed scans of colonian cellular structure. He identified aspects of our biology that our own scientists have been studying for centuries. In minutes, he understood connections we've been working to figure out for decades. Emperor Vex leaned forward in his chair. How is that possible? Because 15 years ago, he was part of the original First Contact team, Zara said quietly. The room went completely silent. Even the soft humming of the palace's energy system seemed to fade away. Explain, her father commanded, his voice carrying the tone he used during military briefings. Dr. Yeath pulled up another holographic display, this one showing historical records from the early days of the war. According to our archives, the human claims he was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. He says he was present when our scout ships first made contact with Earth. The Emperor stood up from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at his capital city. The official report said the humans attacked our scouts without provocation. Father, Zara said carefully, what if the reports were wrong? The reports came from our most trusted military commanders. But they weren't scientists, Dr. Yeath interjected, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans sent scientists to make first contact. We sent soldiers. Emperor Vex turned back to face them, his expression unreadable. What exactly are you suggesting? Zara took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to say could be considered treason. What if humans never wanted to fight us? What if we started this war based on a misunderstanding? The holographic display shifted again, showing communication, records from the early contact period. The human says there was a team of Earth scientists led by someone named Dr. Elena. They were excited about meeting us. They wanted to learn about our culture and share their own knowledge. Then why did the situation turn violent? The Emperor asked. Dr. Yeath's patches flickered even more rapidly. According to the prisoner, our military commanders decided that human adaptability made them a genetic threat. They captured the Earth scientists for study. Study? They wanted to understand how human minds could be so flexible. They thought if they could figure out the secret, they could use it to make our own soldiers more effective. Zara watched her father's face change as he processed this information. She could see him beginning to understand the implications. The human says his research partner, Dr. Elena, died during these experiments, she added softly. She spent months being tested by our scientists, trying to convince them that humans only wanted peace. Emperor Vex was quiet for a long time, staring at the holographic displays without really seeing them. Finally, he spoke. If this is true, then we didn't defeat a hostile invasion. We destroyed a peaceful contact mission and then had to fight. The survivors. It gets worse, Your Majesty, Dr. Yeath said. The prisoner's knowledge of our biology suggests he spent years studying us before the war began. He knows things about our physiology that could be used to develop weapons specifically designed to hurt us. But he hasn't, Zara pointed out. If he wanted revenge, he could have shared that knowledge with other human resistance fighters. Instead, he's been fighting using captured weapons and basic tactics. The Emperor walked back to his desk and sat down heavily. Show me everything you've learned from him. For the next hour, Dr. Yeath presented a detailed analysis of their conversations with the human prisoner. They learned about Earth's scientific community, about human culture, about the hopes and dreams of a species that had been looking forward to joining a galactic community. They also learned about the systematic destruction of human civilization, told from the perspective of someone who had watched it happen. According to the prisoner, humans have a concept they call proportional response, Dr. Yith explained. They believe that violence should only be used to match the level of threat they face. What does that mean? It means that if we had simply left their planet alone after the first contact incident, they probably would have left us alone too. But when we decided to destroy their entire world, Dr. Yith paused, choosing his words carefully. We turned a peaceful species into the most dangerous enemy we've ever faced. Zara spoke up. Father, he told me something that I think is important. He said humans don't want to destroy us. They just want us to stop trying to destroy them. How can we trust anything he says? Because he's had multiple opportunities to escape or hurt people in the palace, and he hasn't taken any of them, she replied. Because he could have lied about his scientific background, but everything he's told us has checked out. And because... She hesitated, then decided to be completely honest. Because when I talk to him, I don't see a monster. I see someone who's tired of fighting and wishes things could be different. Emperor Vex studied the holographic displays. For several more minutes, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he looked at his daughter and his head scientist. If what you're telling me is accurate, then this war has been based on a terrible mistake from the very beginning. What do we do now? Zara asked. Her father was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of difficult decisions. We need to learn more. Dr. Yith, I want you to work directly with the prisoner. Find out everything. He knows about human culture, human science, and human intentions. And if we discover that humans truly aren't the threat we believed them to be, Emperor Vex looked out the window again, watching ships in the distance that were probably carrying soldiers to fight more battles in a war that might never have needed to happen. Then we'll have to figure out how to fix the biggest mistake in the history of our empire. 2 weeks after Dr. Yith's shocking revelation, the palace was in chaos. News of the human prisoner's true identity had spread through the highest levels of government, and everyone had an opinion about what should be done. Princess Zara stood in the great crystal chamber where the empire's most important decisions were made. Around her, the most powerful colonians in the galaxy argued loudly about the fate of one human and possibly the future of their entire civilization. The creature's knowledge of our biology makes it a security risk that cannot be tolerated, General Korth declared, his battle scars glowing bright red with anger. It must be eliminated immediately before it can share what it knows with other human resistance fighters. But General, Dr. Yith replied nervously, the prisoner's scientific background could provide us with invaluable insights. If we study his knowledge instead of destroying it, we might finally understand how to end this war. Emperor Vex sat on his crystal throne, listening to the debate with the same calm expression he always wore during important meetings. But Zara knew her father well enough to see the stress in the way he held his shoulders and the slight flickering of his bioluminescent patches. Your Majesty, spoke Chancellor Drex, the Empire's oldest political advisor, we must consider what will happen if other worlds learn that our war with humans began because of a misunderstanding. Our reputation as a strong, decisive empire could be seriously damaged. Are you suggesting we continue a war we know is wrong just to avoid embarrassment? Zara asked, unable to stay quiet any longer. The chamber fell silent. Young royalty rarely spoke during high command meetings and never in such a direct way. Chancellor Drex's expression showed disapproval. Princess, with respect, you lack the experience to understand the complex political implications of this situation. Maybe that's exactly why you should listen to me, Zara replied, surprised by her own boldness. I don't have years of political calculations clouding my judgment. I can see this situation clearly. She walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display showed casualty reports from the ongoing war. Look at these numbers. 5 years of fighting, millions of our soldiers dead or wounded, and human resistance is stronger than ever. Whatever we're doing isn't working. General Korth's scars flickered with irritation. Princess, human resistance appears strong because they fight like desperate animals. But our military superiority will eventually wear them down. Will it? Zara challenged. Because according to our own intelligence reports, humans are becoming more effective fighters, not less. They're learning from every battle, adapting to our tactics, and finding new ways to turn our advantages against us. She activated another display showing recent battle analyses. 3 months ago, a single human ship disabled one of our dreadnoughts, using nothing but mining equipment and creative thinking. Last month, a group of human civilians managed to capture an entire supply convoy by convincing our soldiers that they were actually rescuing prisoners. Those are isolated incidents, General Korth insisted. Are they? Or are they examples of exactly what makes humans so dangerous, their ability to find solutions we never see coming? Emperor Vex finally spoke, his voice cutting through the growing argument. What are you proposing, daughter? Zara took a deep breath, knowing that her next words could change the course of galactic history. I propose we do something our empire has never tried before. I propose we attempt to make peace. The chamber erupted in shocked chittering and flashing lights, the Colonian equivalent of gasps and shouts. Several council members began talking at once, their bioluminescent patches creating a chaotic light show. Impossible, Chancellor Drex declared. The Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. But that's exactly the problem, Zara said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise. We keep calling them inferior, but they've been outfighting us for 5 years. Maybe it's time to admit that humans aren't inferior. They're just different. She walked over to another holographic display, this one showing the human prisoner's scientific work. This human spent years studying our biology because he wanted to understand us, not to hurt us, but to communicate with us. What if there are other humans who feel the same way? You're suggesting we trust creatures that have been destroying our fleets? General Korth asked incredulously. I'm suggesting we stop giving them reasons to destroy our fleets, Zara replied. Every battle we fight creates more human resistance fighters. Every world we attack makes the survivors more determined to fight back. We're not winning this war, we're just making it bigger. Dr. Yeath spoke up hesitantly. Princess Zara may have a point. In my conversations with the prisoner, he's expressed a desire to return to scientific research rather than continue fighting. If peace were possible, many humans might prefer it to endless war. And if you're wrong, Chancellor, Drex demanded, if we attempt peace and the humans use it as an opportunity to attack us, then we'll be exactly where we are now, Zara said, fighting a war that's costing us more every day. But if we're right, if peace is possible, then we could end this conflict and maybe even gain something valuable. What could humans possibly offer us? General Korth scoffed. Zara smiled, remembering her conversations with the prisoner. Knowledge. Humans see patterns we miss. They solve problems in ways we never consider. They've survived in environments that would kill most species, and they've turned every disadvantage into a strength. Imagine what they could accomplish if they were working with us instead of against us. Emperor Vex stood up from his throne and walked to the chamber's main window, looking out at the capital city below. The Empire has been built on the principle of strength through conquest. What you're suggesting would require us to admit that conquest isn't always the answer. Maybe it's time to try a different kind of strength, Zara said softly. The strength to admit when we've made a mistake, and the courage to try to fix it. The chamber was quiet for several minutes, as everyone considered her words. Finally, the Emperor turned back to face the council. General Korth, what is your honest assessment of our military position? The general's scars dimmed as he considered the question seriously. We have superior technology and more ships, but human tactics continue to evolve faster than we can adapt to them. At current casualty rates, this war could continue for decades, with no clear victor. Dr. Yith, what is your assessment of the prisoner's trustworthiness? Everything he has told us has been accurate. His knowledge of our biology could have been used to harm us, but he has chosen not to share it with other humans. I believe he genuinely wants peace. Chancellor Drex, what would be the political consequences of attempting peace negotiations? The old advisor was quiet for a long time. Other species in our empire might see it as weakness, but they might also see it as wisdom, if we can end a costly war through negotiation rather than continued fighting. Emperor Vex returned to his throne and sat down, his expression thoughtful. Princess Zara, you have proposed something unprecedented in our empire's history. You're asking us to risk everything on the hope that our enemies might become our allies. I'm asking us to risk hope instead of just risking lives, Zara replied. The emperor looked around the chamber at his advisors, generals, and scientists. Each of them represented different aspects of Colonian society, and each had valid concerns about her proposal. Very well, he said finally. Princess Zara, I am giving you permission to conduct an experiment. You will work with Dr. Yith and our human prisoner to develop a framework for potential peace negotiations. You will have 30 days to prove that such negotiations could be possible. The chamber buzzed with surprised reactions, but the emperor continued. However, if your experiment fails, if the human proves untrustworthy, or if this attempt at peace puts our empire at risk, the consequences will be severe. Zara felt her skin shift to bright gold. The color Colonians showed when they felt hope mixed with determination. Thank you, Father. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, Emperor Vex said seriously. Because if you're wrong about humans, daughter, you may have just doomed our entire civilization. As the council session ended and the various officials filed out of the chamber, Zara remained behind with her father. The huge crystal room felt suddenly empty and quiet. Do you really believe peace is possible? He asked. Zara thought about the human prisoner sitting alone in his cell, drawing pictures of a world that no longer existed and talking about returning to scientific research. She thought about Dr. Elena, who had died still believing that Colonians were good people who had just made a mistake. I believe it's worth trying, she said, because the alternative is a war that might never end, against an enemy that gets stronger every time we fight them. Emperor Vex nodded slowly. Then let us hope that wisdom and courage are enough to fix the mistakes of the past. Outside the palace windows, ships continued to launch toward distant battlefields, where Colonians and humans fought and died in a conflict that had begun with a misunderstanding and grown into something that threatened to consume both species. But for the first time in years, there was also something else in the space between the stars. The possibility of peace.